Wow, that was spooky, right? Well, back in the 80s anyway, we thought it was. Did anybody ever think to ask what those little girls were always doing, jumping rope in their Sunday church clothes? I mean, everybody remembers what I'm talking about, right? You know, you got these little girls out here, they're just skipping rope, kind of a dreamlike scene going on here. Where are their parents at? I mean, come on. Yeah, well, whatever. I was originally going to call this The Cask of Amontillado after Edgar Allan Poe's short story, but I just didn't know if this is what Amontillado actually was going to look like. I don't know if this is Poe's vision of what he looked like, so, you know, we didn't do that. My name is Chris Martin for Creative Cow, and welcome to a very special Halloween tracking tutorial. And the way we've got this tutorial lined up, we're going to first track our footage in SynthEyes. We're going to export a Lightwave scene and open that up in Cinema 4D. We're going to create the whole geometry that you see here in Cinema 4D, and we're going to obviously track it to the wall. And then we're going to apply the lights, materials, some compositing tags, and then we're going to export all that out using multipass rendering. We're going to open that up in After Effects, and we've got quite a few post effects that we're going to put in there, including this Happy Halloween text, and we're going to have that tracked onto the wall as well. And we're going to do some things in here so that this sort of animates on over time. So we've got a lot to do. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are in SynthEyes. Let's go ahead and load up our shot. Go to Shot, Add Shot. We'll go to where our sequence is. We'll load that up. We're going to use the NTSC preset, square pixel. Click OK. It's going to load all this up into cache. And we're just going to do a simple auto track on this. Shouldn't take too long. There. All right. Let's take a look at our camera view here. Do that right here with this menu. And we'll run through here, and you can see we've got a lot of trackers here that are just jumping all over the place because there's lack of points for it to track to, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete these. Delete a few of these that are just jumping all around here. And you'll notice that our horizontal pixel error code over here is 0.3, which is pretty good. Anything 0.5 and below is acceptable here. I deleted those points. Let's go ahead and refine that. We'll go to the calculator icon here. Click on Refine. I'm going to click on Slow but Sure to get a better result, and click Go. And it's going to recalculate the solution. Okay, we're done. And we've still got a 0.3 horizontal pixel error. And it looks like our points are sticking. I'm going to go to the coordinate tab icon here. I'm going to click on to select 3 points. And I'm going to select 3 points on the wall here, because we're going to be tracking the hole onto the wall. So I'll select this as my origin. This will be along the x-axis, and we'll select this point, and we'll apply our coordinate system. And that's done. And now we can see that we have everything lined up about where we want it. You can see here that the camera is actually panning like it was in the original shot, and this is representing the points that are on the wall. So it looks like we're in pretty good shape. So let's go ahead and save this out. I'm going to go to File, Lightwave Scene, .1, and we're just going to leave all the defaults here. We'll click OK, and we are done with SynthEyes. Okay, now we're in Cinema 4D. Let's go ahead and load up our shot. We'll go File, Open, Lightwave Scene. We'll come up here and we'll select the first tracker. We'll select the last tracker and we will group them. Now let's select the null object, rename it trackers. We'll right click, select children. We'll go to the object and turn the display to circles. And we'll probably want to make that a little smaller. This is just for little visual help. Makes it easier to see. And we will go to the color, automatic, and we'll turn it red. We can delete the environment. Let's go ahead and double click a new material. Turn specular off. We'll go to the texture tab for color. And again, we'll navigate to our Halloween tutorial folder. And we will select sequence 2, which is the track of the wall. It's actually the wall sequence. Say no. Click on this little icon of the sequence. Go to animation, click calculate, and it does all the calculations right here. And we need to drop a background into the scene and put the material on the background. So now if we scrub the timeline, we can see we've got all of our tracker points, which are represented by these large circles. Let's actually make those a little bit smaller. Maybe 0.2. Yeah, that looks a little better. So now you kind of get an idea of where everything is at in the scene. And it looks like everything is sticking where it should be sticking, which is very important. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is to create the crack that we're going to use to track on the wall. So I'm going to go into the front view. I'm going to hit Shift V on the keyboard and load a reference image. And I'm going to select the Bezier pen tool, and I'm just going to trace this crack. Now, if this gizmo gets in your way, you can hit Alt D on the keyboard to get rid of it. Makes it a little easier to trace. And I'm just doing a really kind of a sloppy job of this, but just to give you an idea of what you're supposed to do here. You can zoom in. This works very similar to the pen tool in Illustrator or Photoshop. So if you're pretty good with the pen tool there, you should have no problems with this. It works a little more like the Adobe stuff, more so than your programs like Max or Maya. So anyway, when we get close up here, we'll just go ahead and click Close Blind, and it closes that out. And now we can go back in here. I'm just going to click on Show Picture to get rid of that. And I'm going to drop in a rectangle. And we're going to make that a little wider, a little taller. And then we'll convert that to a spline. Select both of these. And we will connect them. So now we can get rid of these two. And then we want to give this an extrusion. So we'll hold the Alt key down and we'll say Extrude NURBS. Let's go back into our main view and we can see that we have our crack that we're going to use here. We're going to put that at 1 in the Z. So we've got a kind of very thin crack here. We're also going to give it a fillet. So let's go over to the caps, and for the start we'll do a fillet cap, and I think we used 1 and 5 for that, and for the other one it was 1 and 3. Now I'm going to turn my gizmo back on, Alt D, and I'm going to select this. We'll rename this crack. We go to function, actually structure, axis center, and include children, use all objects, click execute. And that brings the gizmo back into the center there. Actually, let's hit Alt-D again. There's the gizmo. Now let's go into the front view again, and I want to align this gizmo with one of the corners here. So I'm going to click right here. I'm just going to move that manually down to the corner. Actually, I think we'll move that to the other corner. There we go. Let's go back in this view, and just so that you know, we're kind of working in the perspective view right now. If we run through the timeline, it'll put us back in the camera view. So with the crack selected, I'm going to scale that down. Let's go to F5, and we'll just move this out so we can see this a little better. Move it up. Now I'm going to go into the perspective view again, and I happen to know that tracker 87 is right about where I want to start, where I want to get this to kind of lay against the wall. So there's tracker 87. Let me take the crack and drag that underneath 87. Where we are. There we go. And then I'll select the crack, go to the coordinate tab, and zero this out. So that kind of puts it over there in that 3D space where tracker 87 is, which I know happens to be on the wall. So now I'll take this back out and start trying to maneuver this to get it to look a little more like it needs to in this particular environment. So let's go ahead and scale it down first. It's starting to make a little more sense. And maybe we'll flip it like 90 degrees here. So you kind of start to get the idea of what's going on here. I'm thinking we need to go ahead and make it a little bigger. Okay, so if we just do a quick render right now, we can see we've got this sort of situated here against the wall. I think we need to move it a little bit, or actually rotate it. It's Alt-D to get our gizmo there. Kind of move that a little better against the wall. Yeah, that looks better. So now if we move this around, scrub through the timeline, you can see it sticking to the wall like it should. Alright. Now the next thing I want to do is create a cube. Put that in the scene. And let's go ahead and convert that to a polygon. And we will go into the front view, and again we're going to move the axis point down and to the right. So go back into the perspective, and we want to use the same little trick here. So I'm going to drag the cube under the crack because I want to mimic its position here. So we'll zero out all this, and let's go ahead and scale our cube down. There we go. Now let's pull it back out of there. Let's go into polygon mode right here, and we're going to select this front face of the cube, and we'll just delete that. Now what I want to do is just try to line this cube up with the front of the crack. Let's just kind of go into a few different views here and see where we're at. So we'll take that like that, and let's move it down a little bit, and maybe shrink it. And that's kind of what we're looking for right there. Okay, so let's put some materials on this cube. I am going to take our rocky material. I'm going to put it on the cube, so you can see it's on the inside here. Okay. The next thing I want to do is go to the polygon mode and select this part that you can see over here, this right face of the cube. Let's select that, and then I'm going to drop the background material on that, and then what I want to do is come over here and we want to change this to frontal mapping because we want this to blend in with the wall. So then we'll come over here, and if we do a quick render here, you'll see that you can't really tell anything, but when we come over and we put a compositing tag on that and click on compositing background and render it again, you can see that it's gone. Okay, now we want to do something very similar to the crack. So we'll select the crack, which is this front part, and we will put our material on it, the background material, change it to frontal, and then we can just drag this compositing tag, control drag, over here onto the crack, so it's got the compositing background on, and now when we render, everything's kind of disappeared. So you can see everything stays where it's supposed to, and when it's rendered we get this crack in the wall. Magic, huh? Okay, so now I want to go and take a look at this crack here, and let's make sure that we have make sure that you have it set up like I do here with the hole inwards checked here, and then I'm going to drag the rock material on that, and I'm going to give it a selection of R2. So now when we do a quick render, we see that we have our rock material on the inner caps here, so that you can kind of see it, so it stands out. It gives it a little more of a 3D effect. But we do have this problem that the cap is showing right here on the right hand side. So what we'll do is we will drop a plane in the scene and sort of get it lined up basically with this right side. So we'll also put the frontal material on that plane so that it's invisible. And then again, we'll use the same little trick. We'll drag it underneath the cube. We'll go to the coordinates and we'll zero everything out in order to get it lined up with the cube, and then we'll make it much smaller, pull it back out, and we will play with its rotation. And move it around. And basically we're just trying to get it lined up with the front. So let's go into a different view here. See if we can't pull that up here. And we'll also need to put a compositing tag on there. Composite background. And now you can see that we have it lined up here, so when we do the quick render again, you can see this plane is basically covering up this little crack over here. So if we moved it out of the way and render again, you can see it's there. So So let's back up. And we've got that covered up. So now we've got our crack. We've got the inside of the crack, the caps. We've got something, a material, the rock material on that. And we may even want to come over here and play with that just to get something that looks a little better for this inside crack. And if we scrub through the timeline, you can see we've got everything sticking. So that's how we basically create the illusion that there is a crack in the wall. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just skip on over to the file that I used to create this in the first place, because basically all we have to do from this point on is to insert the head and the legs and all that good stuff, and there's really no point in you watching me do that because it's pretty straightforward. So I'll just switch on over. We've got basically the same scene set up here. I've got the head that I'm going to include with this tutorial, and I've just animated the eyes, you know, being real weird looking. I have put two lights inside next to the head, wall light 1, wall light 2, and I have put some external compositing tags on there. I've got a light out in front, actually two lights out in front just to illuminate this. These wall lights inside I've turned a blue color to give a little blue coming from up here and some coming from down here. The figure, these are the legs for this guy, and I got those from right here, the figure, and I just took off the body, put the legs underneath him. So if you put the figure down and hit C to convert him into polygons, then you can come down here and you can just delete what you want out of there and keep what you would like as well. So that's how I got the legs in there. And then I went in and put compositing tags on the head. You'll see on every part of the head, the eyes and everything, and gave it an object buffer of 1 so that we could isolate the head and the legs out when we get into After Effects, so we can put elements behind him. Now the only other thing we did was go into the render settings, enable multipass rendering, give it an output. We want to save our compositing project file, and that has to do with these two guys right here. If you don't save this file, these aren't going to appear in your AEC file that you open from After Effects. So be sure and put these in here and save out your compositing project file. Save out the multipass image and the regular image, and you want to make sure under the multipass that you have selected an object buffer, which is right here. And object buffer 1 by default will be selected, which is this head and the legs. That's what the object buffer 1 will be when we get into After Effects. So that's basically it. After that, we just rendered out, and the next step is After Effects. So I'll see you there. Okay, so here we are in After Effects. The first thing we want to do is go to the place where you saved your AEC file, that compositing file that I told you about, and we'll just double click that, and it's going to give us 3 different folders. And here's our Cinema 4D composition, so we'll just double click that to open it up, and you'll see it brings in everything with all of our lighting from Cinema 4D and our animation. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is isolate this guy out from the background here. So this is the object buffer file right here that I told you about. And you'll see that putting those compositing tags and putting the object buffer has created this mask for him. So we're going to use that to isolate him out. So I'll take this TIFF sequence here, I'll drop it into a new comp. I will take the object buffer and put it on top, and then I will use the track matte Luma matte here, and you'll see now that we have isolated this guy out from the background. So we can close that out, go back into our comp, and we can just drag this and drop him into the comp here. And now we can actually put things behind him rather easily. Now let's go ahead and make some adjustments here. For the footage, I want to put a curves effect on that, and I just want to drag this down, kind of darken the scene up, make it a little more like dark, and I'm going to put a little blue into the scene and drag a little red out of it. Also want to paste a few of the elements I've got that I used in my previous tutorial. Let me get these, this. This is just so that we have the elements to drop in here into the scene. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier was that back in Cinema, I also used an external compositing tag on tracker number 87 because I knew that that was right up by the wall, and that was a tracker that I was going to use for placement in After Effects. So be sure and put that on tracker 87 if you're going to follow this tutorial exactly. Now the elements that I'm going to be using here, I'm not going to be able to include with this tutorial, but they are from Video Copilot's Action Essentials 2. So this is a great product. I recommend everybody grab it just as soon as possible. But these are some of the elements from that. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is to put this puffy smoke element into the scene. And by the way, that's the tracker 87 I was telling you about that we put that external compositing tag on. So we have this in here when we open up our composition. So I'm going to take the puffy smoke, I'm going to drag it into the scene, and it's exactly what it says, puffy smoke. But right now it's a 2D layer. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to change that to a 3D layer. I'm going to go to my tracker 87 and pull up the position data, Control C, and then come over here, and we're going to paste that to the position of the puffy smoke, which is Control V. Now let's take that and size it down a little bit. Maybe not that much. Okay, so now it's kind of staying there. I want to pull this up a little bit, and why? Sort of move it exactly where I want it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to select the pen tool, and we're going to come in here and we are just going to make sure that our puffy smoke layer is selected, and we're going to come in here and we're going to trace along the edges, and we're just going to create a mask here. You can probably do this a little better if you take your time, but I think you'll get the general idea. Alright, let's go ahead and feather that out a little bit. Hit MM, and we'll just give it a little feather. Turn that off. Now let's go ahead and drag that below the head layer. You can see it's kind of isolated now. And let's hit T for opacity, maybe take that down just a little bit. And now when we drag through the timeline, you can see our smoke sort of creeping around in back of our head. Okay. I think the next thing I did was to add a little hue saturation to that puffy smoke layer. turned on colorize, and just kind of went through here and found a little more saturated looking color. I mean, really, you can just do anything you want here, but you can just, I think I went with something like that. But I mean, this is just all personal preference, obviously. Alright, let's go, let's look at our sparks. Let's go ahead and put in Slow Sparks 2. And you can see that it's right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and drag in our Slow Sparks, next element. And you can see that here. So what I did here is I went to time, enable time remapping, and I just dragged these out. You can just kind of play around with this and see what works best for you, but the other thing I did was to turn the add mode on so that these were a little brighter. And we'll just start that here, end it over here. So let's turn that into a 3D layer and copy the 3D position data from Tracker 87 to the position data of the Slow Sparks. Now we need to come out here and make this a little smaller, and again just sort of position it so that it's sort of where we want it. Then take our pen tool, come in here, and then I want to take this and drag this below the head again. So now we've got some sparks going on behind him. That's kind of cool. And for the Slow Sparks 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate, Control D, the Slow Sparks 2. I'm going to select it. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to Alt drag this one on top of that one. So now we've got those other sparks, and we'll just offset that a little bit. We've got some variation in our sparks going on now. Now the last piece of this was to put the text in here. So we'll select the text tool. We'll type in Happy Halloween. Again, we'll come over here and make this a 3D layer. And it disappears. Let's take the position of Tracker 87, Control C, and paste it to the position of the text, Control V. And we'll need to come in here and adjust the orientation. And you're going to need to kind of play around with this. Play with the size a little bit. And maybe the rotation. That looks about right. And you'll notice that you can see some gradation going on in here because this 3D layer is reacting to the lights that came over from Cinema 4D, so that's kind of cool. The next thing I did was to use a stylized color emboss on the text to sort of give it that 3D look, even though it's not 3D. And then we put a simple glow on it. Let's come down here and find our glow. Put that on there. Let's take that threshold down to about 40. Yeah, that looks pretty good. This is looking pretty cool. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is make this sort of animate on, and I'm doing that with an MOV file, but you could actually create this yourself by creating your own fractal. But basically what this reveal looks like is this, and it starts out black, and as it goes through it's completely white. So when it's black, the Happy Halloween text will be invisible, and as it animates to full white, the Happy Halloween will be revealed. So I'm going to drag that over my Happy Halloween, and I'm going to use a Luma mat here. So now we just need to basically get this situated where we want it, and again I'm going to use time remapping here, enable time remapping, and I'm going to stretch this out so just kind of get it lined up with where you want this thing to start being revealed. And I'm going to say probably somewhere over here, and you can see as we sort of go on, as the reveal.mov becomes full white, you can see it starts to reveal the Happy Halloween. So really, actually what we'll need to do is to pull this all the way to the end here, so like that, so that when it's revealed here at the end, it stays. Because if you take this and move this over here, then it's going to disappear. So make sure this is all the way at the very end of your animation. So I think that's about it. We are pretty much done. The only other thing that I did here in the very end was I went and I pre-comped these layers, and I put a Magic Bullet looks effect on here, and that's just that's just something I like to do, so you can go in here and kind of play with these and get different looks on this. But that's completely optional, and if you have the software. Anyway, that is the tutorial for today. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. My name is Chris Martin for Creative Cow. Have a happy Halloween. 1, 2